What's up, everybody? My name is Chance. Today we're going to be hopping into our second week on the FNM podcast. This week we're diving into more Core Set 2021 spoilers. Awesome stuff came out. Honestly, I'm excited for the cards. With me again today, I have MTG Jeff and HelloGoodGame.
Hey, what's up, everyone? MTG Jeff here. Dude, I'm so excited for this set. It's really, really exciting, the things that are coming out. And I think that they've done a really good job of like filling all of the holes that were there from the previous sets. So I think we're going to have a really fun 3 months, and then after rotation, we'll see kind of how it goes after that. But I'm really excited for these next 3 months for sure.
Hey everybody, HelloGoodGame. Really looking forward to diving in to more spoilers here today with you guys. The first episode was really great, but to overview a lot of the cards and the majority of them. And then today we're going to almost finish up, and I think we've got one more section to do after today. So really looking forward to diving into some of these cards. And to be honest, I've not even looked at these yet today. So this is going to be all fresh for me today. So really looking forward to it.
Yeah, so for just today, they actually released a bunch of like commons and uncommons. So I'm not sure if they're completely wrapping it up because there's supposed to be 3 more days of spoilers, but I'm sure we'll get a few more cards here and there, and then we'll probably just talk about like where we think each of the different colors are at, what the good cards are, everything like that, the sleepers maybe. But yeah, we're gonna go ahead and jump right into this one here. The first card that we have today is Glorious Anthem. 3 career mana cost, 1 and 2 white enchantment. Creatures you control get +1/+1. So we saw this kind of card with Benalish Marshall, where it's just a creature. It was 3 white pips, where creatures you control get +1/+1. A really powerful effect. We've seen a lot of this kind of effect in the past, but the main notable thing here is that it's on an enchantment. It doesn't die to board wipe. It's just a permanent effect that is there. At the same time, though, it is 3 mana versus being like a 2 mana lord or whatever. So it's like there's upsides and downsides to this one. But what do you guys think about it?
Yeah, see, that's what I was actually about to question y'all. Do you think it losing the power of a creature, because yes, it avoids some of the board wipe, but it also loses that 3 extra damage or whatever Benalish Marshall was, right? And that actually kind of pushes mono white weenies into the victory, right? Because that's a total of what they at least swing in once with it, 3 damage, possibly 6 extra damage with it. I like it. I want it to be good. But again, for 3 mana and 2 mono white, you're probably only going to see it in mono white or Selesnya decks, and maybe in token decks. Go wide decks will love this. I'll be playing it in my jank decks, but what do you think?
So I think it's cool, but we brought up the thing about Marshall being subject to a field wipe and this surviving. If the field wipe hits, this isn't going to do you any good anyways, right? It's just a dead enchantment on the field with no creatures. So preferably, I would like it to be a creature, especially in the aggro style deck where you do want to be aggressing and hitting like those turn 4 wins in when you can. And the Marshall's really great for that. You drop it on turn 3, turn 4, he's able to attack and do there. So I'm a little worried about it, but I think it's going to fit somewhere.
I do think that where we are in Standard makes this a little interesting because Cry of the Canarium, Deafening Clarion, and Storm's Wrath are all like pretty well played, heavily played board wipe type effects. If you can get creatures above, the 2 or the 3 or the 4, power or toughness level, you could end up avoiding some board wipes with this. But I don't think that's really where you're playing because again, this is if it was like I said, a 2 mana lord in creature decks that are playing lords, getting the +1/+1 effect. It works because it's 2 mana, not because it's 3 mana. It's pretty hard to get that to work as well. I think where this card, I am excited to play it in janky type stuff, is more of like a control token type of deck where you just have your creatures randomly getting pumped, where you can be making tokens with Castle Ardenvale. There's the 2 mana enchantment I think that was in Ravnica that just kind of creates tokens here and there. You can do stuff like that and have a bunch of these effects maybe here and there, and then like if you can, whenever you make a token, make a 4/4, a 5/5 in the late game. That can be busted. If you're playing Omen of the Sun, the Orion, all that kind of stuff, this can still be just a powerful effect. But I think that you play it more in like a control janky deck, which can make it powerful, but not so much. I mean, I'm not going to say it's a bad card in any creature deck, but I think you never want to run more than like 2 of it. It's a good card, but never more than that.
Cool. Up next, we have 9 lives. This is another 3-cost enchantment with hexproof. The source would deal damage to you, prevent that damage, and put an incarnation counter on 9 lives. There are 9 or more incarnation counters on 9 lives. Exile it, and 9 lives leaves the battlefield. You lose the game.
Oh, oh, this one's exciting.
So first of all, Flood of Tears will bounce this, making it leave the battlefield. That comes to mind right away. I think Flood of Tears is everything, though. It doesn't target it.
Oh, Flood of Tears. Yeah, sorry. I thought you said... Yeah. That's a good point.
So risky biscuits.
So we've seen a card kind of like this with Phyrexian Unlife, I think, before. So like in older formats, this will definitely see play because there's Solemnity, which stops counters from being put onto any permanents. So that's kind of cool. Phyrexian Unlife, though, what it had before is that if anything would bring you down to 0, you just go to 0. Then once you're at 0 life, any damage will just put like poison counters onto you. The cool thing about this is that whenever let's say if someone's swinging with a creature with Ember Cleave, if it would kill you, first off, it prevents all the damage that we put onto this anyway. So instead, that one creature hitting in for 15 with Ember Cleave only hits twice, type of thing. So you get 2 counters onto it, and that's it. So it changes how it works, where it's just the source dealing damage. So up against mono red, this is still bad because Cavalcade of Calamity is a thing. That's going to kill you faster with this out than if they were just going for your life total, because of that side of it. At the same time, though, mono red, you could end up surviving maybe a turn or 2 extra because of 9 lives against certain decks. And so I love it. I think it's fun. I think that there are... I'm trying to remember what effects there are to remove counters from an enchantment in Standard. I'm not sure if there really is. There's ways to remove counters from creatures. There's ways to remove counters from other stuff, but from enchantments, I'm not so sure. And so there's a lot of fun stuff that can be done with this, but I'm not so sure we can actually make those fun things happen in Standard right now.
Yeah, I was wondering if one of y'all was going to pick up on it. I'm waiting to play this with a Doom Foretold deck and brought back, right? So Doom Foretold, you can sacrifice it anytime it's getting close to when, 9 counters or whatever, or anytime you're getting a little bit paranoid, and then brought back, you're allowed to bring it right back. So,
well, except that as soon as it leaves the battlefield, you lose the game. So if you destroy it with a Doom Foretold, I had a bunch of comments on when I posted this on
that's a good point.
On my community as well. So yeah, it does actually die. Like you lose the game before you'd have the chance to have response, unfortunately.
How does this work? I know Teferi's ability is on creatures. How would this work with phase out? Is it still in the battlefield?
Well, you can't target it, so I don't know if...
No, you can phase it out with your own stuff. Technically, so if you were playing this on your own, does it phase? I think it only phases out creatures,
it only phases out opponents.
And the Teferi is only creatures, but if you did get some...
But phase out wouldn't cause it to leave the battlefield, technically. It would just come back in within the amount of counters that it had on it after the fact. So like if you're playing this in Commander with Teferi's Protection, that kind of stuff, you could end up using that as a way to do it. Of course, Teferi's Protection saves you anyway, but anyway. I think it's a fun one. It's definitely janky, but I'm not sure what we can do with it in Standard. Maybe Historic. There might be some stuff in Historic to do with this.
Alrighty, well, next up we have Speaker of the Heavens. It's a mono white. It's 1 mana cost, so that's kind of nice. It has Vigilance and Lifelink as a 1 cost. That's really nice, and it does only deal 1 damage. But the nice thing about it is you can tap it and create a 4/4 White Angel creature token with flying. You can only activate this ability anytime you have at least 7 life or more than your starting life total, and anytime you can cast a sorcery. So there are some what's the word I'm looking for here? Yeah, cantrips to it, whatever you want to call them. But 7 life more than your starting life total, that's not that bad. We've seen cards that had 15 more than your starting life total, and people still got those like it wasn't that hard. So I think this is very interesting, and it's kind of, to me, it kind of reflects the opposite of the Arcfiend Vessel in the way that it's like coming back to the battlefield and you get a 5/5. With this, it's like another way to put a body onto the board, except you're not losing the creature. So it's like mono white's version of that.
Yeah, I think that 7 life in this format is really easy. We have a Light of Hope for 1 mana, gain 4. We have a Revitalize to be able to gain 3, draw a card.
Okay. You're good. Good to go.
So yeah, I think that overall, like you can absolutely be tapping down with this on turn 2 and be creating angels. You know, bring this out turn 1, turn 2, light of hope. You're at 28 life. You get to start creating angels. So like it's totally possible to be doing this on turn 2 in standard right now. So that's the reason I think this is definitely like a thing that you should and could be playing right now. Revitalize is also coming back. So yeah, I'm really hyped and excited for this. This is a lot easier than it sounds to get to 7 life over your life total. Yeah, I think this is a bonkers card. It's really, really good.
We've seen a lot of Anthem effects be revealed, like the one we started with today, the +1/+1. I think that's not only good on Speaker of the Heavens itself, because it's pretty weak, a 1/1 that dies quite quickly, but if we can get a couple Anthems on it, not only does it become stronger and more viable, but the 4/4 White Angel quickly will become a 5/5, a 6/6, a 7/7 with flying as well. So a very powerful card, and something that even though I think we could play it on turn 1, maybe something you want to save in pocket unless you have protection. Make sure that you're able to utilize it, because people are going to be hunting this with removal.
In standard right now too, before rotation, there's also Bishop of Rebirth, where whenever an angel enters the battlefield, you gain 4 life. And so there's actually a pretty fun deck you can do with that too, where you can just have this come back, be creating angels. There's a lot of really fun, cool things you can do with this card. We've seen the same type of effect with, I think it was like Speaker for Dragons. I can't remember. It's a card that was brought into in Historic Anthology 1 or 2, where
6 lands.
Yeah, you have to get to 6 lands and then it creates a dragon. It would still play pretty heavily. Getting to 7 life is easier than getting to 6 lands, but there's also like your opponent can interact with it more so than just the 6 lands. They can interact with it. So like that is the one downside, is like if someone is going really aggressive, if you don't have the right cards to get your life total high, you're probably gonna be like, there's gonna be games where you're stuck at 25 life or 26 life and don't get to that 7, the 7 life over, and you don't really get to use this as well. And those are going to be bummer times, but I think that you can build a deck around this right now in the format that is still crazy powerful, that I wouldn't really be worried about it. Like I think that you run this and it's going to be a really powerful deck.
I think the vigilance goes a long way as well if we are running Anthem effects on it, as now he can be attacking, gaining that life, and defending, gaining life again. So again, I don't think 7 is a hard triumph at all.
I like the idea of him in like an enchantment aura deck, because he already does have the vigilance lifelink, like you said. So like, just pump him up, or even a counter deck, Selesnya. Yeah, there's just a lot. There's a ton.
All right, we also have the next card, Discontinuity. 6 career mana cost, 3 generic, 3 blue, instant speed. It ends the turn. The cool thing here is that as long as it's your turn, this spell costs 2 to cast, basically. 1 and a blue. It says it costs 2 and 2 blue less the cast. So the cool thing here is that it immediately ends the turn. We've seen effects like this before. I can't remember the name of them, but played pretty effectively, where if anything would happen, it ends any end of turn triggers. So like, let's say, so until end of turn. So let's say the one I'm most excited for is March of Multitudes, or the mirror effect. What is it? Not March of Multitudes, I'm trying to remember it. Mirror March, there it is, Mirror March. If you create a bunch of tokens with Mirror March, let's say that you have a couple of those out and everything, and at the end of turn, all those things, sacrifice at end of turn. With Discontinuity, 2 mana on your turn, end the turn, and you get to keep every single token that you created that turn, because the end of turn effect won't trigger, and it'll never trigger again for those creatures. And so there's some really cool things you can do about ending turn on your turn, as well as this just being a 6 mana extra turn spell. So for 6 mana, you can end the opponent's turn on their upkeep. They do get to untap lands, so it's a little bit worse than just a straight up, what's it called?
Nexus.
Get an extra turn type of card. Yeah. So they do get to untap, but you do get to just end their turn. They don't get any effects whatsoever, and the game's over, basically. This can be countered, though. You can counter it. There can be some stuff to it. So I think this is a really fun card, because it's a powerful effect by itself, and you can do some really, really fun jinky stuff with this too.
Yeah, I think this is a great jank card, like you said, probably with more viable options that we can even think of, especially in Historic. Being able to end your turn to keep things alive or to stop those triggers from happening. I think it's a lot to get into, and I love cards like that where I don't immediately see an application for it. It's like, oh, that does that with this. Or it's just like something where you know it's going to have a big impact and be used basically from here on out, especially in Historic. So it's really cool to have a card that is like a mystery piece for me that I'm able to go through my whole old collection and just look through everything, trying to find go with it.
Yeah. I think it's a fun card.
Next up, we have Miscast. This is a 1-cost blue spell. It's an instant. Counter target instant or sorcerer spell unless its controller pays 3. For me, this is a really cool card, especially sideboard option, especially in these control matchups, blue versus blue, right? Where it is a lot of instances and sorceries. This is me better than a spell pierce in those matchups. So I think this is going to be another spell that's here to stay.
Yeah, I mean, if it's not main board, it'll for sure see sideboard action pretty consistently.
Yeah, the only upside Spell Pierce had is that it hits non-creature spells, so you can hit planeswalkers, enchantments, artifacts, where this only hits the instants and sorceries. And so I think the places you play this, just like you said, like if you're going to be going up against a spell-heavy deck, it comes out of the sideboard. Or if you were playing the mono blue tempo type of deck where you can dodge removal, where you're wanting to keep creatures on the board, this is a really good protection because most effects are instants and sorceries for killing creatures. You know, this kills a board wipe for 1 mana, which is really powerful in the tempo aggro type of decks. The only issue I feel like right now is that there's a lot of effects right now that are on enchantments from Theros Beyond Death. There's a lot of effects that are from creatures, from mutate type stuff. And so that's the only downside is it depends on meta if this actually sees play right now. But this is another piece to make that mono blue or like a blue-white tempo type of deck come back into play. So we'll see how that goes.
Alrighty, next up we have Sublime Epiphany, 6 mana. It is an instant speed spell, 2 mono blue cost in it, and you get to choose one or more, which is really strong with these kind of effects. You get to counter target spell, counter target activated or triggered ability, return target non-land permanent to its owner's hand, so your opponent's or yours. Create a token that's a copy of target creature you control, and target player draws a card. So everything that you do in blue deck normally, except it's in 1 card at instant speed wrapped up in a nice little bow.
This is
So it's a little expensive. That's the only thing I have to say. But when we see things like Casualties of War, it also costs 6. That just absolutely is disgusting when it's played on you and probably throws the momentum of the whole match. I think this is exactly like that, where this is just an absolute bomb. When your opponent holds up mana, you don't have anything for them to counter, and then they unleash this, or worse yet, they use this as their counter, right? Just disgusting.
So we've seen a card similar to this in Cryptic Command, and Cryptic Command has seen play for forever. It's a really, really powerful card. And this, I would say, is better. It is 2 mana more. And the biggest downside of it being 6 mana is that a standard 60-card deck, Yorion might play more than this, but a standard 60-card deck, you're not going to run more than like 2 copies of this probably, just because you want to make sure that you have a curve. And so like that's probably the biggest downside is it's going to be hard to fit more into your deck. You know, like, but you absolutely want this in the deck. It does everything you want it to. For 6 mana, it's definitely worth getting every one of these effects for 6 mana. I wouldn't be worried about using this for a counter spell or whatever. Man, so many effects on this. I can see if you're like wanting to play the counter war or something like that, spending 6 mana to counter 1 spell and not being able to hold up another counter spell can be an issue. But overall, this is just such a powerful card. I don't think you play more than 2 copies of it because of the 6 mana cost, but you're absolutely throwing 2 copies of this into any control deck, I feel like. All right, next up we have Hooded Blightfang. Hooded Blightfang, 3 mana cost snake creature. 1/4, it has Death Touch. Whenever a creature you control with Death Touch attacks, each opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. whenever a creature you control with Death Touch deals damage to a planeswalker, destroy that planeswalker. So I know there's a lot of people that have actually been asking for that type of effect to just be a basic rule that planeswalkers should die to Death Touch as well. I'm glad that they're at least bringing this in as an effect. I think it's cool. So that's nice at least. But really, I think the bonus here is whenever a creature you control attacks, each opponent loses 1 life, gain 1 life. So we saw the same type of effect with there was a vampire at 4 mana. It was a little bit harder to cast. So whenever a vampire swung in, it drained them like that, and it was a really powerful card. The only downside of it was that it was at 4 mana. This one being at 3 mana, a little bit easier to cast, I think makes it really powerful. It's hard to kill because of the 4 toughness stat line. The biggest downside of it is just how many Death Touch creatures are there really out there. I think that's a big downside of it. The plus side, because it is 3 mana, it's a lot easier to get this stacked effect. You can get multiple of these out into the battlefield. If you get 2 of these and swing in with 4 creatures, that's a ton of damage. It's a lot, and with Death Touch creatures where people aren't typically wanting to block with, like mutate creatures or whatever, anything like that. So I think this has a place in Standard. We still have Varaska, the other Death Touch Lord, which makes the Death Touch tribal a little bit more exciting. I don't know. What do you guys think? Is this a card that will actually see play? Is it competitive, or like where do you rank a deck built around this?
So I always see cards like this that I really enjoy. Like it looks fun, right? But when I look at the current Standard pool, is it gonna see play? Maybe not right now, but it always gives me hope. And sometimes I'm let down. Like we had Mism Tank come out. That was a 3-cost red vehicle that came out whenever you cast an instant sorcery. That I was like, this card is going to be the best. They're going to release new cards that support this. So I think this might be a similar card to that, where it's good, but do we have enough support behind it to really make the most out of it? Another thing that comes to mind, we have Call of the Death Dweller, right? That can bring back something and put a Death Touch / menace counter on them, right? So I think it's close, right? We do have some Death Touch, but is Death Touch going to be a top meta deck? Probably not. But again, it's really fun just to have these different styles of decks to keep the game fresh, right? So we're not all just grinding the top meta decks all the time, because it is a very vast game. There's a lot to get into that doesn't always see the light of day. That still has a huge fun factor for me, at least.
Yeah, I think you can build a deck around this that will be powerful, but it's never going to be completely consistent, because I think that you have to have the Hooded Blightfang for it to be a powerful deck, and it's hard to build something around that where you're going to draw it consistently. And so that's the biggest downside, is there's not enough pieces to make it powerful, but it's fun. It's a great, really fun deck effect.
Yeah, I think y'all got it there.
Next up, we have Kivar Tech, the Despiteful. Is a 4-cost, 2 black-sourced spell, legendary creature, human warlock. Other creatures get -1/-1, and it's a 3/2. So this is an opposite of an Anthem effect, right?
Yeah, complete opposite. And it hits your board and their board. So it's a global effect. It's interesting.
Yeah,
I think a good sideboard card. Maybe shuts down some of the token decks, right? But oof, and it costs 4 as well, right?
I was about to say, if and we have seen some more cards with them. If Saprolings and tokens and all that Selesnya starts coming back, sure, we'll see this play. But if that happens, then those decks won't exist anymore at all because of this card, right? So it's kind of like on the seesaw, either being completely up or completely down, I feel like.
Yeah, I think right now there's the Ethereal Absolution at 6 mana, which gives all your stuff +1, all their stuff -1. If you're really looking for this effect, even out of the sideboard, like typically if you're playing more of a control deck that would run this, I feel like you can get more value out of Ethereal Absolution, even being at 6 mana, because you get the negative effect on just their board. And then you get the +1 on your side, and the ability to get creatures, spells, all that kind of stuff. So, I mean, having this be at 4 mana, there's definitely things you can do with it. I'm not saying it's bad because it kills tokens. Killing lots of tokens is never a bad effect necessarily, but I don't think if I was in the situation, I wouldn't be sideboarding this in over Ethereal Absolution right now. Maybe after that sideboard's out, or that rotates out, but I don't know. I'm not really hyped on this card personally.
Yeah, I agree. Maybe something that we see in the future, and some weird jank commander that would work good against one specific style of deck, right? But again, unprive the Carnarium and then run Ethereal Absolution later. Ethereal Absolution is great because it has the mana to take the 1/1 flyers, which can become 2/2 flyers as well, right? So I just can't justify 4 mana. And it is a legendary, so you're not stacking this at all. So
yeah.
Alrighty, moving us along. Sorry about that. We have Terror of the Peaks. I am super excited about this card, by the way. 5 mana, double red cost in its mana cost. It is a 5/4 flying dragon, and it reads, spells your opponent casts that target Terror of the Peaks cost an additional 3 life to cast. And this is the first time that I've seen this style of ability. I'll let y'all talk about the history. I know y'all know a bit more about that. But furthermore, whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, Terror of the Peaks deals damage equal to that creature's power to any target. So it's 5 mana. Yes, it's a lot. And it doesn't exactly do anything whenever it enters the battlefield. But if you have it in something like a Mirror March deck, which is immediately where my mind goes to, right? Then you just have it enter and have another one and another one. You do have the potential to just immediately KO someone, right?
I didn't think about the Mirror March potential of this. There is a turn 4 deal 35 damage with this card though right now in standard. So if you ramp like crazy, get this out on turn 3, and then turn 4 play another one because it's not legendary. You'll get 5 damage out of the first one that enters the battlefield, and then you have Chandra's Incinerator, which can also be played for then 1 mana. And if you're ramping well, on turn 4 it's totally possible with the amount of ramp we've got right now. Then you play Chandra's Incinerator for 1 mana, play a 6/6, 2 Terror of the Peaks out there on the battlefield. It'll do 6 damage twice. And then Chandra's Incinerator will also deal damage because these creatures dealt damage, so it does double the damage again, so that's 24 damage. And then you could swing in with the other Terror of the Peaks that was already untapped and do another 5 points of damage. So there's a lot of potential damage with this deck. That's probably the thing that I'm really excited for is that I think Chandra's Incinerator with Terror of the Peaks, like with everything else, there's just a lot of really powerful pieces for either combo decks or like janky mid-range type of stuff where you're just throwing out bombs. And this is a bomb. This really is a powerful card. It's hard for people to target it and remove it. Basically, board wipes is really what's going to deal with this. But unfortunately, Elspeth Conqueror's Death also gets around the additional 3 life to cast side of things. Like any of those, like they enter the battlefield and take effect. I wish that there was a way to get around those a little bit more as well for red, because the reason this card is there is because you want to give them a downside for being able to kill your best creature that you just threw a bunch of mana onto. There's way too many effects, I feel like, right now of like Banishing Light, Elspeth Conqueror's Death, all those things that kind of just exile this. But this is just a really fun card. I'm definitely going to be going for that turn 4 kill with this.
I honestly didn't even go straight to jank when I seen this. For me, I was like, finally, a sideboard card when I'm playing Gruul against another Gruul deck, and we're not just trying to top deck Domri's ambushes on each other, right?
Right.
This could really swing that match in your favor if you, again, can get to it before he gets to his.
This gives value for playing those Love-Struck Beasts when you don't have a 1/1 creature as well or something like that. If you have this out 3 mana, deal 5, and have a 5/5 on the board, there's a lot of really high power creatures that can be played with this too. And yeah,
Rotting Regisaur.
Yeah, just playing this, like you're saying, just for in a value mid-range style deck is going to be really, really good. All right, next up we have Transmogrifying. And we've seen effects like this before. So rare sorcery, exile target creature. That creature's controller reveals top cards from the top of their library until they reveal a creature card. That player puts that card onto the battlefield and shuffles the rest of the library. So it's basically Luca's -2 effect. It's very, very similar. I'm really glad Agent of Treachery is gone again, so that we don't have more effects like that. So really glad that's gone. At the same time, though, I have built decks around the effect with like Yadaro, that is an 8/8 that comes in with Trample and Haste. You can build really fun decks where you're playing tokens. You have a controlled creature card. You can use this with End-Raze Forerunners as well right now in Standard, where if you are creating just like a big token heavy deck, at 4 mana, doing this at sorcerer speed, guaranteeing that you're going to get hit in End-Raze Forerunners is actually not bad. You can create enough big token, like a wide enough tokens deck that with End-Raze Forerunners coming down or Yadar or something like that, you can legitimately win games on turn 4 with this, or at least come really close to winning them on turn 4. And so I think that in Standard right now, this is actually a pretty cool effect to have, where it being at 4 mana may push it over the edge, where Luca being 5 mana, then -2, all that kind of stuff might actually be a little bit harder to get to at times. And so I don't know. I like this effect. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I think you're spot on. I really like it. Being able to search your library for a specific card is absolutely broken. Like, we do have things that shut that effect down, but again, End-Raze Forerunner coming out as a 7/7 Vigilance Trample haste is so broken, especially if we're ramping into this card as well, right? Like, we have Gilded Goose, we have the Bonder's Prodigy, even like your Leafkin Druids and stuff. So I think this will definitely be play without a doubt, honestly.
It is interesting that you can exile target creature, not creature that you control. If ever someone has like, I mean, it's sorcery speed, so it's not amazing, but someone has like a Questing Beast out, one of those like the best creature of their deck out, I guess you could try to hope to trade that up for a 1/1 or something like that as well. So there is some other effects to it as well, where you can kind of take down their side, where I think there was a blue version of this exact card. I think you could only target your own stuff. So I think it's a good card. I think that it's fun. I'm not sure if it's more powerful than just playing Luca, though.
Yeah, on second thought, Luca's ability is like sacrifice the creature, exile it, and then you get a creature with converted mana cost greater than that creature's. And then this one's just going to pull the next creature off your library, right? So if you did want to abuse this, you wouldn't be running the Goose and the Leafkin Druid, like I mentioned, because the risk to cast this for 4 just to pull another Leafkin Druid is too great, right? You do need to make sure that it's engineered in such a way that you're getting that payoff every time. Next up, we have Scavenging Ooze. This is a 2-drop ooze creature spell. It's a 2/2. We can pay 1 to exile a target card from a graveyard. If it was a creature card, put a +1/+1 counter on Scavenging Ooze, and you gain 1 life. This is neat because we don't have to tap it. I love things that we can just stick our mana into. So even with Anissa in play still, just the fact that we can continuously drain all of our mana into this is really, really neat for.
Yeah, I really enjoy it just because all the cat ovens and the Euros and the escape, it deals with all that, and it's very cheap on the entry and on the actual effect, right? 2 mana entry, 1 mana on the effect. You get to gain life, so it's also good against mono red. It feels like I'm playing this against everything, right? Like it's main board for sure.
Yeah, I mean, this is a reprint that this card has seen play for forever against a lot of decks, because it's just a perfect mana sink, like you were saying. It does everything you want. It can create a really big body. Like, this very often in modern play or whatever gets up to like a 5/5 and just starts beating down if you hit enough creatures to get it +1/+1. Being able to gain life against aggro as well is huge. Cycling right now is, you want to be able to get rid of just a few things. Getting rid of Uro right now, getting rid of Lurrus decks. Like, unfortunately, you can't interact with Cat Oven. That's the biggest issue I feel like there is with Cat Oven, is that you can't interact with the effects of Cat Oven, and so that's still a thing that is annoying. It still stinks, but I absolutely love Scavenging Ooze. I think that it's perfect in Standard right now. It's really, really powerful. And I think that this is something that puts like a mono green deck, something that can dump a lot of mana into this, a little bit over the edge. So I like it. I like it a lot. All right, next up we have Namby, Esteemed Speaker. So this was a card that, like, I think it was in a Planeswalkers deck before, that it just like tutored up to Fairy, at least the Namby. So seeing her actually come out as a new card is sweet. Rare, it has flash for 2 mana, 1 white, 1 blue, 2/1. When it enters the battlefield, you may return another target creature you control to its owner's hand. If you do, you gain life equal to that creature's converted mana cost. And then you can pay 3, tap it, and discard a legendary card to draw 2 cards. So if you draw multiples of these, it's actually not too bad because you can just discard it, draw 2 cards. Being able to gain life is kind of nice. It's only things that you control, though. It is a May ability when you flash it in. So I don't know. I like this card. It gains you life. It draws you cards. You can be bouncing back things that are really powerful right now. Like there is a potential blink deck with like, Charming Prince, Elite Guard Mage, all that kind of stuff. So like there are some valuable things Namby can do. I'm not sure if I'd actually play it though. What do you guys think? Are you actually going to be playing this in that deck, or like besides just for the fun of jank? Like are you actually going to be playing this consistently in a good deck?
Probably not. This does go very well with jank. One thing I think of is the fact that it does have flash, so it could see play potentially just from that alone. And it goes well, I guess, with Brazen Borrower, which we bounce back for an additional petty theft.
That's true.
Again. So, still probably not. Maybe in some big-brained historic deck, potentially. But I just love even having cheap commanders for Brawl, right? And especially one that's going to help us gain life over and over because
yeah, this is definitely more like a commander card in my opinion. It's really good. I wish that it was able to bounce back enchantments or artifacts as well, like things that you're fine having come back to your hand and get the effect again. That would be sweet. Having it bounce back a creature that could block 5 points of damage for you or something like that, I don't think even if you're bouncing it back and gaining 4 life is necessarily worthwhile all the time. Like I think that it's going to be hard to get the situations where this is going to be useful. But I mean, every once in a while though, it is just going to be a straight up value card. So I don't know. I'm in between. I think that it can see play, but I think you lose the consistency with this card versus just playing something else in the 2-drop slot.
All right. Next up, we have Ronna, Heart of Keld, 3 mana, 3/3. As long as it's your turn, Ronna, Heart of Keld has first strike, which is pretty nice. We've seen this effect before, but I don't think it was on such an actual body as this one. Furthermore, you may look at the top card of your library anytime, and you may play lands from the top of your library. So we were seeing, what was it, Azusa or something like that, that saw the play 2 lands a turn, I think. I don't know if that's still, like, if this turns that card online or it's just kind of nice with your Boreal Grazer or whatever. But then last but not least, we have sink 6 mana into it, red and a green. Ronna gets +X until end of turn, where X is the number of lands you control. So great and limited for that alone. I'd like to say that this card sees play just based off of its effect and being able to look at the top card of your library, and alongside the Vivian that we just got out of the last set, where you can play creatures. Like, you just play a creature only deck and you can play everything off the top, just left and right. So I feel like it'll see play. I feel like it's good, but again, sometimes I just want a card to see play, and so that's what's sort of manifesting itself.
I know. I feel like they did Ronna dirty again. In Dominaria, it was a card that was like, it was powerful, it was okay, but like it was just bad enough to not see play. And I feel like this is exactly the same thing again, where it's like, come on, just give her a really good card. Why not? It's good. The reason that you play this though is for the being able to look on the top of your library and play like additional lands or whatever. Like that isn't a powerful effect. We've seen something similar with Courser Crufix, which is able to just play lands from the top of your deck, and that is really nice, being able to just kind of string things together and be able to play lands from there. And so I do think it sees play. But I think it's kind of the same type of thing as like what's the Gruul God as well that came out right now?
Clothius. Clothius.
Yeah,
How do you pronounce it?
Clothis. Yeah, I think it's Clothis. Clothis. This is kind of that same type of slot where, like, I feel like Clothis gives that same almost value that you're wanting from this. It's in the same mana range. and I just don't know which ones you're playing over it. So it's an okay card. It's cool. The being able to just beat down with a massive swing with it at +X is nice, but meh.
You just mainboard this one, and you sideboard Clothius, whatever, however you want to say it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Really cool card for me. I think it probably won't see play. Is it better than a Gruul Spellbreaker? Probably not. In limited, this is an absolute bomb, and I think we can really, like you were saying with Vivian, and then Dryad of the Elysian Grove, or a new commander spell that came out, Azusa, that allows us to play 2 lands a turn. I think that we could have a lot of fun with this card. But as far as Gruul aggro goes, I even think the God of Destiny gets the nod for a 3-drop easily every time for me over this. But it is an elf, so we should keep note of historic elf tribal, right?
Yeah, that's true. And it is a legendary for Brawl as well. So I think Brawl is also a thing that this, like, because honestly, this is a card I would love to build a Brawl deck around. Where I think it's great, maybe even better than Clothis for that Gruul type of deck. Because in Brawl, being able to have an extra little bit of value playing things from the top of your library is actually really powerful. So this is a sweet Brawl commander.
Next up, we have Watcher of the Spheres. This is a 2-cost creature bird wizard with flying. It's a 2/2. Creature spells with flying you cast cost 1 less to cast. Whenever another creature with flying enters the battlefield under your control, Watcher of the Spheres gets +1/+1 until end of turn. This is an uncommon. It's a 2/2 with flying, so base stats are really good. Creature spells with flying you cast cost 1 less to cast, getting better. And then whenever another creature with flying enters the battlefield, it gets +1/+1. So this is a very playable card in an already staple budget deck of Azorius Flyers.
So answer this though: how many creatures aren't 1-mana pips that you're gonna be playing with this, or a bunch of other stuff? Because that's the thing I was recognizing is which creatures is this actually going to be making costs less?
Eagle is the first that comes to mind, but I feel your concern where we have a lot of single cost, on Plains Flyer, for example, like Thunderhawk or the Loyal Pegasus. So maybe we just have to engineer around it.
I think what they're going for this, at least with the target design or whatever, is more so like a mid-range Flyers deck. Because we've seen aggro Flyers and everybody either loves them or hates them, right? Because they either wipe you or you wipe them and then game's over. Same thing with like Mono Red. So I think with this, they're more so saying, hey, you can play Dream Trawler for a little bit cheaper now and still run some like values counter spells or whatever and try to go Flyers a little bit longer rather than just having to hit as fast as you can because they all either cost way too much or deliver way too little, you know?
Yeah, and that's one thing too. With a lot of Flyers have a lot of mana pips in their costs and everything too, so you're not. But Empyrean Eagle is a really good point. Where if this does help you cast 2 Empyrean Eagles on the same turn or do something like that is a big turn if you can do that. The other side of this too is just it's effective when everything's enter the battlefield. It gets +1/+1. Playing this with like the unlikely alliance or whatever, the improbable alliance, there it is, where you just like create a bunch of fairy tokens on a turn. Like there's some other like fun, interesting things you can do with this card as well, just for the sake of it getting +1/+1 and swinging in. We saw a similar effect with Merfolk back during Ixalan, where there was a creature, the River Sneak, would get bigger every time Merfolk would come in. If you have ways to create lots of Flyers and do lots of stuff, and this is basically unblockable being in the flying area, it can be an explosive play just for that effect. So I think that you play this maybe more for that effect, and having things cost less is just like a bonus if ever like Empyrean Eagle or a few things do cost less. I mean, let's say you have 2 of these out, or 3 of these out or something like that, and a Sephara, you don't have to pay the 7 to get there. You don't have enough creatures to get to the cheap cost, but you can still play out Sephara just with it costing 3 less or something. So I think that it's a good card. It definitely sees play in the flying deck. I'm not sure if it pushes it over the edge of it actually being like a legitimate deck though. Like the Flyers deck has always been so close with Rally of Wings, everything. So I don't know. It's close. It's really close.
Yeah, it just stood out to me for the fact that it was an uncommon, right? So for beginners and free-to-play individuals, this is an easy card to pick up, and it really is just going to improve the power of their deck. Hushbringer for one comes to mind.
Yeah. Hushbringer actually stops this ability, though, unfortunately. The ability of the +1/+1.
Okay.
Yeah, so Hushbringer would stop whenever another creature enters the battlefield, it triggers whatever. So that's it is kind of a Nambo with the Hushbringer side of things, but at the same time, I mean, being able to cast more things is still nice. Yeah. All right, next up we have Animal Sanctuary. It's a rare land. You can tap it to add colorless mana. You can pay 2 and tap it to put a +1/+1 counter on a target bird, cat, dog, goat, ox, or snake. What do you guys think of this one?
I'm going to be playing it because I'm trying to find some counters deck with these creatures already. I've already been looking at cats and dogs, so you can throw in birds, goats, ox, and snakes. Sure, we got a whole zoo. Whole petting zoo there.
I think it helps the proliferation decks getting that initial +1/+1 on everything if you are running birds, the cats, the dogs, the goats, the ox, and the snake. And I think with this set, we do have a lot of those creature types incorporated. Again, this could be a pretty cool land to pick up in a limited pool.
Yeah, I don't know. I think that, unfortunately, just like with birds, we were talking about flyers, there's quite a few good birds out there, but you're needing quite a few mana pips. Like it's hard to play a colorless land in that deck. If this could add mana of any color to play one of those as well, then sure, this would be amazing, you know, like whatever. But the fact that you're having to put this in for the lack of color, so you lose consistency. Occasionally you'll get the +1/+1 counter with it, which is an extra, just having that effect in land is nice, but I'm not sure if it's worth losing a colored land. And so I think that if this was a pay any color for those creature types as well, then I would absolutely run it. But as it is, it probably doesn't even get a slot into my cat deck or my dog deck, you know?
So you're saying people should play this with Chromatic Orrery is what you're saying?
There you go. Yeah, I guess so. Or Chromatic Lantern and stuff. Yeah.
Just go all out if you're getting this one.
Okay, next up, we have Garruk Unleashed. This is a legendary planeswalker. He comes into the battlefield with 4 loyalties, +1 ability of up to 1 target creature gets +3/+3 and gain trample until end of turn. -2 ability, create a 3/3 green beast creature token. Opponent controls more creatures than you. Put a loyalty counter on Garruk the Unleashed. And -7 ability, you get an emblem with at the beginning of your end step, you may search your library for a creature card, put it into the battlefield, then your library. So a 4-cost planeswalker is always fun for me. It comes in with 4 loyalties, so that's pretty standard. Right? 5 would be nice, but 4 is cool. And then a +1 ability, up to 1 target creature on the turn. Not great. Add, right? So it pushes him to 5. Ideally, you probably will need a blocker, right, to protect him. So trample could go to waste if you only have 1 creature because you want to protect him, unless it has vigilance. That's pretty specific, unless you have multiple creatures, right? The one that trample that goes in. Creating a 3/3, I think that's pretty cool. And then if your opponent does have the creatures like you're worried about because you want blockers, then you're going to get to put a loyalty counter on that way as well. But I would interpret that as just being a -1 at that point, right? Like you -2 and then you put 1 on him for it total. Then -7 for me is completely broken, like we see with Luca, just being able to search your library for whatever you want to the battlefield, but it's going to take you like 3 turns to get there. So, what do you guys think?
The thing for me is it's kind of battling the what is it, Vivian Arcbow Ranger, that 4-mana planeswalker that's also really busted and gives trample, but also gives counters. So it's not just like a 1-turn thing. It's makes this person a better blocker, also gives you the removal. So I really like it, and I'm definitely going to be playing it. I just don't know if it'll see play over that one. Like a lot of these cards that we're seeing, actually, I feel like their power level is like right here, and then the cards that are already out are like right here, right?
Yeah. So the biggest effect, the reason I would play this is to try to get to the -7, which, like, is that really going to happen? I don't know. Just like you were saying with the Arkboar Ranger, if we're playing a mono green type of deck, instead of just getting something +2/+2 and swinging with trample, this can give it +3/+3 instead. I think that the beast creature token is good in case you didn't have the effect that you needed for it. But really, like, the only reason you would play this over the 5-mana Vivian, the 4-mana Vivian, even the 3-mana Vivian, the only reason you would play this one over any of those in the Planeswalker creature-heavy deck slot is to try to get to the -7 ability. If you could, at the beginning of your end step, every turn, grab your best creature and shuffle your library, that's definitely the best emblem effect that we've seen on a green creature in a long time. Except maybe Nissa, and even with Nissa, I would like this almost more than that. So, like, it's a really powerful emblem effect, but we've also seen how hard it is to get to emblems. You will do it occasionally, but that's the only reason that you play this over any of the other ones, is to try to do that, I feel like. And I'm not sure if you can actually do it consistently. Maybe.
So let's keep in mind the other Garruk that we just seen, the Golgari version, that creates the 2/2 wolves, and when those wolf dies, we put loyalty counter on each Garruk we control as well. That could be pretty cool, and an easy way to push this Garruk up to 10 quite quickly, right?
That's actually a really good point. That would be a really fun deck to play. A little bit janky, but I mean, I think that the -7 here is powerful enough to try going for that. So yeah, that actually could be a legitimate game plan.
Alrighty, now there is a card we actually missed, Lilliana's Standard Bearer. It's 3, it's a flash creature, it's 3/1. Whenever it enters the battlefield, you draw X cards, where X is the number of creatures that died under your control this turn. So it's a little costly. It'll fit nicely into the Slitherwisp flash decks, right? And you're getting to get some more card draw out of this. You're going to deal a little bit of damage. I don't know where I'm playing it though, right? Because, like, draw X cards where X is the number of creatures that died this turn. I guess I'm playing that after a board wipe, right? Like, just saving that effect separately from the creature. What do y'all think?
So it's kind of competing for the slot with Midnight Reaper right now, where just whenever a non-token creature you control dies, you draw a card. The fact that this has flash does make it good and it's powerful. Drawing cards is never a bad thing, and you can, let's say we're just playing cat oven type of stuff, the number of creatures that die. Let's say you have 2 ovens and a cat, it dies twice, you bring it back in, you draw 2 cards. I mean, there's some effects you can do like that are pretty powerful already, but does it beat the Midnight Reaper slot? You don't lose life when you draw cards, so there is that. But I think Midnight Reaper is rotating out in 3 months. I think that this card is maybe on the fringe, fits more into the flash decks. Maybe a couple decks that are wanting more of that effect is going to be in there. But until Midnight Reaper, like, once Midnight Reaper sideboard's out, then this comes in, just fills that slot perfectly. So that's my prediction with this card. It's really good. It is a powerful effect, but Midnight Reaper is just more powerful right now, in my opinion.
It's just the fact that it has flash that gets me going. It is a knight as well, which is really fun. We have Blacklance Paragon, which is another knight with flash that's black. And the fact that it is a blader 3/1, just flashing that in on an empty field, getting that 3 damage, never a bad thing. It is a little bit more expensive than Blacklance, not giving anything touch, I believe, or was it lifelink? But
it's both.
Both. The ability to, when you need it, draw cards and recover from field wipes. This is a reoccurring theme that we're being shown in each of the colors.
Dude, your thought was too powerful. It broke the stream.
Yeah, too much lag. Just I think that this is really good, and it will see play the longer that we go on. I'm really happy that it's a knight, so that archetype can to live on. And any creature with flash I love, and then any draw engine I also love. So this is all around good.
Yeah, it's definitely good. I think it's more of It is 3 mana. More card draw is great. I could see this actually being really great in a token type of deck, because that's the big thing that Midnight Reaper doesn't have is if you have like 10, like if you're playing a more tokeny type of deck that has a bunch of stuff, if all those things die and you're able to hold up mana and flash in, this can be really powerful in that type of effect. So it'll definitely see play. Where it sees play is kind of more the question, and I don't know. I'm kind of in between with it. Let's move on to Feline Sovereign. 3 core mana cost, 2 and a green. Other cats you control get +1/+1 and have protection from dogs, which with the dog lord out right now, like it actually was a legitimate deck. But all of a sudden, they just made the one card that just shuts down all dogs. So I'm kind of actually a little bit angry about this, but it's also a really cool effect. It doesn't get protected from anything else. There's not a lot of dogs, so it's not going to affect things too much more besides that. But the other ability, whenever one or more cats you control deal combat damage to a player, destroy up to one target artifact or enchantment that player controls. Very, very powerful effect. There's so many artifacts and enchantments out right now. Even in creatures, there's artifacts and enchantments there. And so cats have historically been able to go wide pretty well. And so I think that being able to swing in with a bunch of token cats, a bunch of different things with this is pretty sweet. I think that you're definitely going to get some value out of it. I don't know. I'm a huge cat fan. One of my favorite decks back with Almond Cat was the cat tribal deck. And so I'm glad to see cats coming back and being more of a thing. What do you guys think of it, though? Is there actually a cat tribal deck here? We do have Kahira.
I think cats are close, right? Not Strength of the Pride, not a Johnny. The war leader, Lennon war leader, the one that brings the other cats in with him when he enters.
Oh, yeah.
I think that could be pretty cool. But my mind goes straight to just people running a cat oven, right? Putting this in there and then just destroying the other people's oven and then just running their oven.
Yeah. Yeah. There's also Cub Warden right now, which also creates a bunch of cat tokens, which is pretty powerful. There's quite a few mutating cats. In fact, any of the legendary, like 3-color mutate creatures, anything that was in, I can't remember the color. I think it was in white. They were cats, and so that was something they did with everything. Is anything that had white in its color that mutated was a cat as well. And so there's actually quite a few pretty good cats out there. I've done a 4-color cat tribal deck quite a few times, and it was close to being good. There was actually some pretty powerful stuff you can do with it. I think this puts over the, like it'll add to it. I don't love that it's in green, honestly. I think that makes everything else that we're working with right now a little bit harder to play, because we want it in white or maybe even red right now with Snapbacks or whatever else. And throwing in green in here makes it harder to play, but it could be really fun.
Cool. Next up, we have Spore Web Weaver. This is a 3-cost creature spider, a 1/4 with reach and hexproof from blue. Whenever Spore Web Weaver is dealt damage, you gain 1 life and create a 1/1 green sapperling creature token. Yes, please. This is going to go in every green sideboard. I love when cards read protection from blue. Shifting Ceratops is absolutely cool. That on doesn't even have to be mono blue. It could be like the Azorius control, right? Getting around the Teferi bounce, for example. So powerful, and then it's got reach, so it's shutting down the flyer decks as well, and having the ability to create those creature tokens is absurd. I think this is a really cool card and going to be a great green sideboard.
I'm excited for this in my Stormwild Capitor decks. There's this and that goblin that came out. What is it? The Taunt Basher or something like that. It's a 5 mana, indestructible. It just seems like they're playing into it perfectly. And those decks were already fun to play before and semi-realistic. Now you're just giving me a few more pieces for it. I'm happy.
The unfortunate thing is if you're playing like lots of Deafening Clerics, things like that, the Sapperlings will end up dying to a lot of those things too. So it is an interesting effect. It is hexproof instead of protection, which does have some downsides to it. I really don't know. I feel like this is a really, really powerful card in limited. I'm not sure if I really would play it much in standard personally. It's whenever it's dealt damage, you gain life and you get to deal one green. So like this is actually really powerful against mono red. So like that's probably the place. It's weird because it's hexproof from blue, but I would probably almost run this more in like a mono red matchup because of the life gain and creating more blockers. At the same time, though, it's not a really big threat. And so I really don't know. Like everything about this card is cool. I did a spider tribal deck a while back, and I could definitely see doing something like that again, like where you're playing maybe Huatli as well to give all the toughness, be able to attack in with based off toughness. That's a fun deck that I've done in the past. So that's probably where I would slot this in more into like an actual like full deck for that. We are getting a few more spiders that have more powerful effects. At the same time, though, the stat line of 1/4 makes it really hard to close out games. And basically, unless you are doing something like the Stormwell Caprador type of effect, it's hard to really play around. Opponents can play around this pretty well of not doing damage to your creatures. There's a lot of just destroy target creatures. There's a lot of just kill target thing, and so it does lose a little bit of value there. Even though having it be a pretty good card against Deafening Clarion is kind of nice, with Jeskai still being out and about.
Yeah, I think this is more so protection against those Flyers decks that we've been seeing and talking about. Mm-hmm. They just don't want them to become so prevalent that like mono blue tempo is everywhere and people can run 18 lands in a deck and get away with it, right? Yeah. So like this pretty much shuts down all those like low to the ground Flyers decks that's just gonna spam you in the face.
Yeah. It's definitely a good card. I'm interested to see where it actually sees play. All right, next up we have Ghostly Pilferer. 2 for mana cost, Spirit Rogue 2/1. We get another Rogue, which is pretty nice with Robin Hood. I can't think of the actual name of the card, but the other Rogue that you get to, whenever a Rogue attacks, you get to play the card so that he looted. Anyway,
Robber of the Rich.
Robber of the Rich. Thank you. Appreciate that, dude. I'm having struggles with my brain right now. All right, so this is rare. Whenever it becomes untapped, if you may pay 2 if you do draw a card. So if ever you attack with this or you tap it some other ways, you can pay 2 and draw a card with this at the beginning of every turn. Whenever an opponent casts a spell from anywhere other than their hand, draw a card. That's the effect that I think I'm most excited for with this one. And then you can also discard a card, and it can't be blocked this turn. So there's a lot of text on this card for a 2-mana card, and typically with a lot of text, there's going to be some way to make this powerful. The fact that there's so many different times it says draw a card on this 2-mana card is also really exciting. It's like, it's a powerful card overall. Being able to discard it, swing in, and be able to pay 2 to draw something else on the next turn. If you have a lot of mana, you have ability to sink into this. That can just be deal 2 damage, draw, and loot every turn. People are casting spells from outside of their hand so often right now with Adventure right now, that this will in some matches draw you like 2 to 3 cards. So it's actually, I think it's pretty powerful. At the same time, though, it is only really good in certain matchups. So what do you guys think about this? Is this actually like a great card, or it almost works card?
Well, here's the thing. It works well against, like you said, the Adventure, but it also works well against Escape, and it works well against Mutate with the Sterix, right? Them building up real big. So it hits more than that. And I think this card...
Also Cat Oven. It also, Cat Oven also casts, I think.
So right now, it's like pretty good, whatever. But I think this is one of those cards that, like, if it's not in meta right now, before this card rotates out, it will see top deck play. I'm like almost for sure about that.
I did lie. I think Cat Oven is just an effect when it comes back from the graveyard, so never mind. Not a cast. But still, you're right. Escape happens a lot.
It works with the Loris.
Oh yeah. Loris, yep.
Any exile effect like Light Up the Stage or Escape to the Wilds as well as playing cards to the top of your library, like we talked about earlier with that new Rule card, Vivian, Bola Citadel. So I think this has a wide variety of applications, a lot of different decks. Whether or not those decks are prevalent enough in the meta to justify running this main board, I guess we'll have to see. But I think as the meta develops, we're definitely going to go flirting with this at the top of the game.
Alrighty, next up we have Silver Smote, or Silver Smot Ghoul. It's 3 mana in black cost. It's 3 and a 1 for its stat line. At the beginning of your end step, if you gain 3 or more life this turn, return Silver Smote Ghoul from your graveyard to the battlefield tap, and then for 2 mana you may sacrifice it and draw a card. Two things I really wanted to touch on with this card is, one, the first little mechanic of it at the beginning of your end step if you gain 3 or more life. We've been seeing that a lot in cards coming out, and I'm not saying that's going to be a top tier mechanic, but for budget players I think it's certainly viable. 3 life in 1 turn is not hard to do, and if we keep seeing value cards like this where you get to bring things back and you can even interact with itself by drawing you more cards, I think it'll be a great place to be. And I really love zombies. I really love vampires. This is them two combined. I don't know. This is beautiful. For an uncommon, this is beautiful for me.
Yeah, this is a great card. I think it's really, really powerful. We will have to see. I mean, gaining 3 life is easy to do. We've talked about that. There's so many effects that do it right now. The downside is, I honestly, I think this deck would be like insanely playable if it didn't enter the battlefield tapped whenever you brought it back. Which, I mean, it would be busted if you didn't. So like I'm okay with it. The only downsides I can see with this is like, okay, you're gaining life, you're bringing it back, you don't get that blocker with it, but whenever, and you're gonna want to probably like wait till you can block and then sacrifice it to draw a card, that kind of thing with it. So I mean, definitely a lot of value. It's really, really cool. Anytime you can bring stuff from your graveyard to the battlefield for free, we've historically seen that's just a really powerful effect. The fact that this also draws cards means it's going to see play. The only downside is that it is 3 mana. Like in older formats, it's going to be harder to justify playing 3 mana to get that kind of effect. In standard, if you're playing like the life gain deck and everything like that, I'm not sure if you're really going for this or just more life gain type of effects for veto and everything. So this is, again, like, I think it's a powerful card. I think it's really good. I think that it's probably, if you're playing a more budget-friendly type of version of stuff, you put this in instead of the extra copy of Heliod that you shouldn't spend cards on. You know what I mean? Like that's where I feel like this comes into play. Is if you're playing the life gain deck, you want to play that stuff, you fill this in for basically all the wild cards you don't have. Because there's other stuff out there that I feel like will take up the slot here, but this deserves at least 1 or 2 slots if you can fit it in.
Anything that says vampire, straight to historic. Something that comes to mind is Sorin giving all of your creatures lifelink on your turn. You can attack. It's going to gain 3 life itself because it'll have lifelink. If you still have mana untapped, you can tap it, sacrifice it, card, and then it comes back at the end of your turn, right? You can cycle it pretty efficiently for just 2 mana, I find, with Sorin or giving him lifelink full time. He's pretty weak, but it is a budget card. It's an uncommon. I mean, obviously, it's not Wilderness Reclamation, but like you said, this is a good filler. Like, this is a high enough value card that it'll do well in a couple different style of decks.
Yeah, you saying that with the sword, and it kind of makes me think of an Ozolith deck, like bringing it back and having a lifelink counter on the Ozolith, and then just keep giving it back to the creature, right?
Next up, we have Volcanic Geyser. This is a 2-cost plus X red spell, an instant. Volcanic Geyser deals X damage to any target. So this is just very powerful, classic red removal. Any target is really great as well. Maybe not as good as something like Banefire, right? Because when it goes above 5, it can't be countered, for example. That's really nice. So this still could fall prey to the counterspell. So maybe a red deck needs to be a little bit more careful about playing it, but just great to give X damage to any target. I love that. And the fact that it's an uncommon is.
Yeah, the instant speed side of it is really nice too. We do have Electro Dominance in the format right now as well, which does basically the exact same effect, but you can also put a card from your hand. You can cast a card from your hand for X, whatever X is, as well as doing the damage to the target. So Electro Dominance is definitely, I think, the better slot right here. But it is good to note that there's a ton of ramp in standard still. You know, like we've seen the decks in the past where like you just ramp up with Elf Ball or whatever it is, and just ramp up until you have like 20 mana on the battlefield, and then just it was Elf Ball because you would fireball their face. type of thing. We've seen that with Banefire working really well. We've seen that with a bunch of different effects. So Volcanic Geyser is nice. It's another good effect. But yeah, do remember there is Electro Dominance that I think is still in the format right now, which is the exact same mana cost. It's 2 red and X, and then you also get that added value of being able to cast something for free. So yeah, it's good.
Works.
Yeah, I mostly wanted to touch on this one. Wilderness Reclamation is still in standard for a little bit, and I know we like harp on it a whole bunch, but I feel like there are a lot of new players and all that are still very interested in the combo. And this is one of those cards where you can try it out relatively free. You know, it's uncommon, and so you don't have to go back and get an expansion explosion that you know is rotating out in 3 months just to try out this deck that needs this one key piece. So I thought it was really nice just in that manner. But yeah, as far as like actual effective play and not getting countered, you're rolling the dice.
That's a very good point. Whenever stuff gets banned, you get the wild cards back and everything like that. They're good at doing that, but when they rotate out, there's no such luck. You know, you get to keep those cards, get to play them in historic. But if you are playing, you know, free to play, that kind of stuff, and you want to stick more towards standard, it's probably better to be spending your wild cards on rotation proof type stuff. I know all of us will probably be making content that's more focused on rotation proof, maybe towards like the end of this set, that kind of stuff along the way. So definitely be checking in with our different deck videos that we do. Because I mean, it's fun. That's how I learned to play Magic. Honestly, was watching other people do it and do a lot of fun stuff. And it's a fun game. There's a lot of fun combos you can do with it. So are you guys excited for this set overall?
Oh yeah, a lot more excited. And this is no bash at Ikoria. I was very excited, but I assumed, and I think I assumed correctly, that it would have an explosive start and then just sort of fizzle because of the effects being so strong and being so limited. There wasn't much like brewability, you know, within the set itself. But this set seems like, even if they are janky brews, they've given us a lot of effects, a lot of different effects that I feel like are at least good enough that you're not going to go out and have a 15% win chance with this deck and play it just for the one combo. You're actually going to get these combos off, you know, relatively frequently, which is nice.
I'm excited. I mean, I haven't seen a Questing Beast or a Winota yet, but it is a core set, which is a bigger set, so we still have a few more cards to come out. I think typically I do get more excited about individual expansions rather than the core sets, just because of how tightly themed they all are together, and it's like a little bit of a story rather than just a whole bunch of cards again. It's another year of Magic, which is also really good because we do get so many tools that are going to be a staple mark within all of the decks, literally until the next core set comes out. So I always just get so jacked for the core sets. I love having more cards to collect, right? So a lot of fun, really looking forward to it. And also, I'm just really looking forward to the rest of the spoilers because I'm sure we're going to get some more good stuff.
Yeah, we're coming to the tail end of it for sure, but they usually save one or two like bombs to kind of throw in at the very end here, so it's exciting. One thing to note too, I just noticed this. So they did reprint Kite Cell Freebooter, which was back in Ixalan as well. Great card. It's when it enters the battlefield, 2 per mana cost, 1/2 flyer, human pirate. Pirates are back. Love it. But whenever it enters the battlefield, target opponent reveals their hand. You choose a non-creature, non-land card from it. Exile that card until it leaves the battlefield. This has seen play a lot in the past as well. Just wanted to throw that one out there as well, where it's just it is reprinted as well. And this is kind of thing. I agree with you that like I kind of miss the theme of like mutate creatures. We're playing big monsters in this one. We're playing fairy tale stuff. We're playing knights and everything, you know. But at the same time, I was saying this last time we did the last podcast as well, is that I love when they fill in the holes in standard. And I feel like they have done an amazing job with that in this core set, where like they've given strong pieces to every set. Like they've given strong pieces to control, they've given strong pieces to the, you know, mono red or whatever. But the stronger pieces they've given have been in like big red. You know, they've given it to like, you know, different styles of decks than you typically play. And so I think it's definitely going to make for very interesting gameplay going forward, a very interesting deck building. And that's what makes it fun, is I feel like they actually did a good job where, you know, dogs, they gave a dog lord that is like a legitimate dog lord. Like it's a powerful effect. cats have a powerful effect now. They've given a lot of pieces to do a lot of fun brewing, and I'm really excited where it's going to go. I think that there are going to be decks that pull ahead as they always do, but I think that this made a lot more tier 2 decks. And that is what always excites me, is all those 2-tier decks that I'm like, I always want this to just be a little bit more powerful and almost get there. Where, in the past, they've maybe made like a lot more like tier 3, tier 4 type of decks with a lot of their stuff. I think a lot of things they did create like some pretty legitimate good tier 2 style of gameplay here. So I'm excited for it.
Yeah, and HGG, you were mentioning you like the single sets a little bit more. I'm actually kind of the opposite. I like the core sets because we get like one a year, and it's like this is your spoiler for all the other sets, right? Because all the other sets are sort of pulling from this. So like I'm seeing zombie, vampire, and I'm like, oh, give me one of them. Give me one of them in the next few
Cats
sets.
And dogs.
Exactly. Yes. So I'm thinking about the next few sets. Zendikar Rising, all that. What's coming next year? That's what these core sets always pump me up for. Is like, I have no idea.
I think we're gonna see Spirit Tribal next year. Out on a limb, and just like we're seeing cats and dogs being brought in to the fold more prevalently, I think spirits are gonna get a little bit love too.
I can see that with the phase out stuff.
Well, that'll be scary. I know that they have so many powerful cards in historic, so I wonder if they would go that way. Honestly, it's a little bit sad because sometimes there would be cards that should be printed for standard, should be printed for stuff like this, but if they print it, then it destroys modern, it destroys other older formats. And spirits is one of those that they might be a little bit scared to go for, but I agree with you. I hope we see spirits again, because we kept like having it almost powerful with the the last Spirit Lord that just cycled out, I think, from Dominaria and everything like that. So I don't know. We'll see what happens.
Alrighty, I think that's going to do it for this episode of the FNM podcast. That's pretty much it for me. You guys got anything else to add?
Thanks for having us on, man. That was a blast.
Alrighty.
I really appreciate it. Looking forward to our next show Friday.
Yeah, so every Friday you can look to have these out. They're on everywhere you can find a normal podcast, Spotify, SoundCloud, all that great stuff. I don't think there's anything else that I have to add. Thanks everybody for the continual support. I had a lot of good feedback on the channel. I don't know what kind of feedback y'all had, but it was all wonderful. Nobody was like, "Oh, this sucks," stop it. Everyone was like loving the content, so that's nice.
Cool. I really appreciate it. Have a great day, everyone.